الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah. Had a couple of minutes before I start my class this afternoon, and something that I wanted to share with you guys that came up in a class that I was teaching earlier this week. With my fourth grade class, we're covering the story of Prophet Yusuf, one of my absolute most famous surahs in the Quran, surah number 12. And it's a story about Prophet Yusuf, who was envied by his own brothers, and we all know the story. He was thrown into a well. His brothers, they thought that their father, Prophet Yaqub, Jacob, loved Yusuf and Binyamin, the two siblings from another wife, thought that Prophet Yaqub loved them more than the other brothers from the other wife. So they decided to, they kind of plotted to decide what they wanted to do with them. Some of them said, let's, get rid of him. Some of them said, one of them even suggested, let's kill him. And then the other one said, let's just throw him into a well. So they decided on throwing him into a well where, as a young kid, he's just sat in a well for days until a caravan came by and saw him. And then the brothers rushed to the scene and sold him to the caravan, which they took him to Egypt and, decided to sell him into slavery. All right. Once in Egypt, of course, he went through some ordeals, some situations in Egypt, and eventually to become the king of Egypt. So the moral of the story, there's so many, but the overall moral of the story is that struggle builds character. Had Yusuf not gone through the things that he went through, well, God knows best whether or not he would have ever ended up in the position, of being a king. So sometimes people treat you a certain way. Sometimes people, treat you a certain way, but they're only preparing you for your own kingship and queenship. So, bask, revel in your struggle. Revel in the fact that there are people that are hating on you, people that are trying to close doors on you, people who behind the scenes will never spare an opportunity to, destroy your honor, never spare an opportunity to, try to thwart, whatever, journey that you are on in your life. Those people are going to exist. The point that I want to make here out of this whole entire story is that time heals all wounds. Time heals all wounds except those that are created by jealousy. Except the wounds that are created by jealousy. When a person is jealous and envious and has nothing else going on in their lives, time will not heal that. Time will not heal that. All right. So, and the reason why, and I'll get to my point, the reason why I'm saying that is because there's some of us who have done wrong to people in our lives. And over a period of time, we have matured. Sometimes the consequences of our actions have come back to us, sometimes double fold. And then we've had a chance to kind of sit in that discomfort and realize that what this person did to me, I did that to somebody else somewhere along the lines of my life. And that's just kind of the consequences coming back to me. And then we realize how wrong the action was. And then, we either go back and try to make amends with the people that we hurt. You have some people who sold drugs in environments, inner city environments, and have gone to jail and have come home and tried to make right, what they made wrong. The light bulb moment went off, the light bulb went off. They had a light bulb moment in prison, and, that consciousness, began to increase, and they come home and they want to right their wrongs. They want to right their wrongs. So they come back out into the community. They're doing a lot of things to help the same communities that they, helped destroy. So you have some people on a personal level, in their personal interactions with people. They've wronged people, they've hurt people, they've done things wrong to people, and then they've sat back, over some time and kind of thought about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of gives us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of gives us, the trials and things that we need to kind of bring us back. Allah says in the Quran, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون. That, fasad, corruption, has appeared on land and on sea because of what the hands of man have done. And we allow them to taste the consequences of their actions, so perhaps they may return back to consciousness, return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and once we realize that I did this person wrong, I did this person dirty, consequences of our actions have come back to us, we've kind of gone out our way to try to right those wrongs. And as as we should, when you know better, you do better. When you realize that you've wronged someone, you realize that you hurt someone, you contributed to somebody else's pain, you should want to go back. When you reach a level of consciousness, obviously, you should want to go back and fix that. You should want to go back and correct that. However, there are some people, who time doesn't heal that. Time can go by, 10, 15 years can go by, and the person is still the same individual that they were. Nothing about them changed. Sometimes we are waiting for that moment for the person to apologize, for the person to admit that they were wrong, for the person to admit, to just some degree, because for the person that was hurt, that's closure. That's closure. And we need that in order to continue on in our journey. We just want to close that chapter of our lives. We just want us to be able to say, all right, and some people don't even require much in terms of, I don't want anything in return. Like, you don't necessarily owe me any apology. I don't want an apology. All I want you to do is just acknowledge you're wrong, stand in your discomfort. Own your stuff. Like, you don't have to apologize to me because, my pleasure and, the pleasure that I get out of life is not contingent on another human being. It's contingent on my relationship with God. As long as I'm right with God, as long as I'm right with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my happiness, my pleasure, my joy is not contingent on another human being. So it makes me know, never mind whether you apologize to me or you don't apologize to me. I'm just in the business of seeing human beings do better. I just want to see people do better. And like, just to admit that you were wrong and say that you have imams, in the Muslim community who have contributed to a lot of the pain. When you look into, like, sometimes I just kind of scroll through Instagram and you just see Muslims all on the gram, just all over the place, man. And to be honest with you, a lot of it is due to trauma, pain. We're just using social media, to air out, to vent, brother sent me a clip of, a young sister rapping and, and he was like, astaghfirullah, this sister, what is Islam coming to? And I said, man, that sister is in pain. She's in pain. Like, I saw pain. Like, everybody else sees her with the microphone rapping or whatever. I see pain. Like, and that's her way of releasing. Everybody has their way of coping and dealing, whether it is, aligned with Islam or not aligned with Islam. Like, a person is only going to follow what they know. If a person is not really aware of the Islamic methods of dealing and coping with pain and trauma, then they're going to do and they're going to use whatever methods are easier for them. And, while we sit back from a place of privilege and judge, you're not experiencing that person's pain. You don't know what that person is going through. Like, we could advise, from a place of empathy and a place of sympathy, but to sit from a place of privilege and criticize somebody because this is the way they choose to deal with their pain, it's not fair. It's not fair. Nonetheless, no judgment, no judgment on the sister. I'm saying what I observed, what I saw. I saw pain. Just like with many of the Muslim women, many of the Muslim men, you look on social media, I see something different. You guys see entertainment. You guys see people, professing to live their best life. I see pain. You know what I mean? Like, I see through all of that, all the shenanigans. You know what I mean? Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed me with a little bit of insight, you know, a little foresight. I see through all of that stuff, man. You know, and I see pain in the Islamic community. And believe it or not, a lot of the imams in the Islamic community have contributed to a lot of the pain. You know, I'm talking about imams from the past in the early 90s, without calling out any names. And those of you who've been around long enough, you know who I'm talking about. You know, then you know the imams that I'm referring to, who have contributed to a lot of the pain and the trauma that we have experienced in the Islamic community. And some of them, all the way up into this very moment today, still have not taken ownership of the pain that they are responsible for. And, you know, we move on, you know, we're trying to heal and we're trying to process and move through this, yet everybody's still waiting with bated breath, you know, waiting for the person to just say, you know what, I apologize, I'm sorry, so that we can close that chapter of our lives and move on. You know, no one is looking for you to apologize to them personally, but people are just looking for you to take ownership. And it doesn't matter how much time has passed. Some people, time will just not heal their wounds. That's just who they are. So now that you understand that concept, let me give you some Quranic reference to that. Going back to the story of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. When Yusuf finally became the king, his brothers came from Palestine to Egypt to collect, you know, some goods. You know, as the king of Egypt, as the Aziz, you know, he was responsible for making sure, you know, they took care of, you know, their citizens. So Yusuf's brothers came to Egypt to get some, you know, fruits, vegetables, wheat. And they didn't know that the king was actually Yusuf, their brother, the same one that they threw into a well, the same one that they lied to their father about, the same one that, you know, they sold into slavery, you know, did all of these horrible things to him, right? Out of pure jealousy and envy. So Yusuf wanted them to bring their younger brother, Binyamin, his other brother, back to Egypt. So he had to find a strategic way to do that. So he came up with this plan that he would put the saddle on the camel, but stick his cup in the saddle, so it make it seem like they stole it. And so one of the guards of Prophet Yusuf screamed out that the king's cup has been stolen. So Yusuf ordered that, you know, their bags be searched. When they searched the bags, they found his cup there. So Yusuf asked, you know, the brothers, so what should be the punishment of the one whom we find the cup in his bag? And so they found it in the bag of the younger brother, Binyamin, because this was Yusuf's way of trying to keep Binyamin close to him, because he knew that his other brothers were treacherous. He knew they were treacherous, and he knew that all of these years that he has been gone out of his brother's life, you know, what they were doing to him. You know what I mean? Like, jealousy and envy, when a person is, you know, afflicted with that, there is no limits. It's no limit to, you know, what that person will do to inflict harm on you. It's a dangerous place to be jealous and envious. And, you know, our community, especially in the African American Muslim community, is just rampant. And we bring this stuff with us from Jahiliyyah. We bring it with us from, you know, prior to Islam. These are diseases, social ills that we bring with us to Islam. And unfortunately, we're so busy worried about correcting everybody else's faults that we very seldom take time to work on our own issues. We're very famous for that. We're very famous for talking about what this person is doing, what that person is not doing, you know, what this person is on, what they're not on. Meanwhile, year after year after year after year have gone by of your life, and you've done you haven't grown one bit. You haven't grown one bit. I'm always amazed with Muslims who, you know, have converted to Islam. You know, you've been Muslim 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and you're still really the same individual you were the day that you converted to Islam. Nothing about you has changed. And that's an honest conversation that most of us, you know, avoid having with ourselves. You are still the same person. Yes, I'm talking to you, the person, you guys that are listening right now. You're the same exact person. Nothing about you has changed. Nothing. No moral compass. You know what I mean? Like, even with the acts of ibadah, I mean, that's not a change. That the fact that you can pray 5 times a day, the fact that you can fast for, 29, 30 days when the month of Ramadan comes around, to me, that's not really a change. Those are regimented practices that anybody could, could incorporate in their lives and make it habitual. It takes, just 21 days to create a habit. It takes 21 days to create a habit. So if you were praying for 21 days, after, 3 weeks, it literally becomes habitual. And going through, and even, just going through the rituals of the prayer, you're not even rewarded for that. That's not even what you're rewarded for. Allah doesn't reward you because you pray, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Inna rajula yansarifu min salatihi wa la yuktab min salatihi illa nisfuha. أو ثلثها أو ربعها أو سدسها أو خمسها أو سدسها أو ثمن أو سبعها أو ثمنها أو تسعها." Right? He said that perhaps a person may leave out of their prayer, and the only thing that they have written for them as a reward is 1/3 of it, or 1/4 of it, or 1/5 of it, or 6th, or 7th, or 8th, or 9th, or 10th of the prayer. Yeah, 1/10 of a prayer. That's all you have as a reward, because the reward of the prayer is contingent on your level of consciousness. This is what is called khushu', that you are, conscious of Allah during the course of your prayer. So it's not just the mechanical movement of the prayer. So anybody can pray. Just because you pray and you have a prostration mark on your head, that doesn't mean that you are a devout Muslim. You understand? Like, we're so superficial. We see a dot or a mark on somebody's head, and, we automatically assume he's a praying, practicing Muslim. No, the mark on your forehead is that you are prostrating, on carpet that actually is rubbing up against your skin. I don't usually have a prostration mark. I probably was praying, at my mother-in-law's house for the past couple of days and prostrating on the carpet, and the carpet is, very rough on your skin. That's what the prostration mark represents. Prostration mark doesn't represent the fact that you're a devout praying Muslim. And even if you are, that doesn't mean just because you pray that you're going to be rewarded. The Prophet ﷺ said that a man may leave out of his prayer and he only has written for him 1/2 of a prayer, or 1/3 of a prayer, or 1/4 of a prayer, or 1/5 of a prayer. And another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was sitting in the masjid, and a man walked into the masjid and he prayed 2 raka'ah. And then he walked over to the Prophet and gave him the greeting of the salam. The Prophet told him, "Irja' fasalli fa innaka lam tusalli." Go back and pray again, because you didn't pray. And he told him this 3 times. Go back and pray, you didn't pray. And he prayed. What was the Prophet referring to when he said, "Go back and pray because you didn't pray"? He was referring to the fact that the person was moving very quickly in his prayer, and he wasn't conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that rubba as-sa'im, that perhaps the fasting person doesn't get anything from his fast illa ajur, except hunger, wal atash, and thirst. Perhaps the person that's fasting, the only thing that they get as a reward for their fasting is thirst and hunger, meaning you get no reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So fasting and praying and going through the rituals of Islam doesn't mean that you've changed. Let's be honest. Let's have an honest conversation. Going through the rituals of Islam doesn't mean that you've changed. What about your character? What about the condition of your heart? What about your state of consciousness? You still walking around asleep. And yet, you've been Muslim for 5, 6, 7 years. So there's some people, who have converted to Islam. And, Allah forbid, there's some people who have been born and raised Muslim from the very beginning and still heedless. Still unconscious. So back to the story of Yusuf. When Yusuf found the cup in Binyamin's, saddle, he asked the brothers, your little brother stole. And listen to what the brothers said. Now, mind you, they didn't know that this was Yusuf, they didn't know that this was their brother that they were talking to, right? So they said to Yusuf, قالوا إن يسرق فقد سرق أخو له من قبل فأصرها يوسف في نفسه ولم يبدها لهم فقال أنتم شر مكانا والله أعلم بما تصفون. They said to Yusuf, they said, if Binyamin stole, listen to what they said. If Binyamin stole, then he had a brother who stole before too. Talking about Yusuf. Now, mind you, they didn't know that they were talking to Yusuf. And it's like, wow, all of the stuff that y'all did to him, you plotted against him, you threw him in a well, you lied to his father about him, you sold him into slavery, and even after all of this time has passed, and Yusuf finally reaches a position where he has become a king, which means that sometimes your pain will push you to become a king. Your pain and the positions that people have put you in is only propelling you if you embrace it that way. You have two ways to deal with pain. You can either wallow in it, oh, woe is me, damsel in distress, man down, you know what I mean? Like, you can either wallow in it, or you can take that pain and you can use it to catapult you to greatness. You can take that pain and you can use it to catapult you into greatness. As Yusuf, he took that pain, and his pain eventually pushed him to the point where he became a king. And Allah knew the whole while that that's exactly what was happening to him. You have to follow the script. You have to stick with your process. And that's what Yusuf did. He followed his process all the way through to the end. Many of us, we want ease, but we don't want the difficulty that creates the ease. Allah says, Inna ma'al usri yusra, that with difficulty, there is ease. So there has to be difficulty first. There has to be. That's part of the process. You have to go through difficult periods in your life in order to reach the place where you can appreciate the ease. Because if you get ease without the difficulty, you're not going to appreciate it. And it's going to be taken away from you anyway, because you're going to squander it. So they said to Yusuf, if Binyamin stole this cup, he had a brother that before him used to steal too. Referring to Yusuf. And Allah says, فَأَصَرَّهَا يُوسُف فِي نَفْسِهِ, and Yusuf was affected by that within himself. وَلَمْ يُبْدِهَا لَهُ, but he never exposed it to them. Sometimes people hurt you, and you just got to take it on the chin. You don't have to go out and let everybody know that, sometimes you got to just take it. I got it. Okay, cool. And I'm not going to expose to you that you hurt me, because when you expose to someone that you hurt them, it's like you're looking for an apology, and it only puts you in a more vulnerable situation, because the person is like, well, I didn't hurt you. They're going to deflect, or they're going to acknowledge they hurt you, and they're going to tell you, well, I'm not apologizing. Yeah, I'm responsible. I asked a particular imam some years ago. I said, if you could do anything different. Now, mind you, this particular imam has been responsible for a lot of the pain in the Islamic community. And I just took the opportunity to just kind of pick his brain to see, whether or not that time process has healed him a little bit, where he could humble himself and acknowledge some of the pain that he has contributed to the Islamic community. And I asked him, I said, if you could go back and do anything differently, with, during your time when you were the imam, I said, what would you do different? And he looked me in my face and he said, I wouldn't do nothing different. I was on the Quran and the Sunnah. I'm looking at him like, what? Everything you did was against the Quran and the Sunnah. Are you kidding me? He's like, oh, bring me dalil. What's the dalil? It's like, man, dude, I'm not going there with you, man. I'm not going there with you, man. Like, if that's what you believe and that's what you want to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on, more power to you, man. I wouldn't want to meet Allah like that. Like, you so sure of yourself. But that process of time healing, for some people, it just doesn't work. That's just who they are. I'm not saying that before his demise, he, might not have a change of heart later on. Maybe. I'm saying as of right now, some people don't even see that they did anything wrong to you. Some people are just that detached from reality that they have been the number one cause of the trauma and pain in your life. And to them, they were just living their best life. They didn't do anything wrong. What did I do to you? I didn't do anything to you. It's like, Wow. Some people are literally that detached. Some people cannot see themselves. And it's not your job to make the person see themselves. That's not your job. You got to let, the divine, you got to let the world handle him, because the world has a way of keeping its balance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this world and everything in it with a balance. Everything flows in orbit, perfectly. And Allah will make sure that it remains like that. It's not my job to establish balance. That's God's job. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's job. Al-Muqsit. Allah is al-Muqtasid. Allah is the one who establishes, equality and balance in the world. That's not my job. That's not your job either. So this whole idea of, trying to make people see themselves, trying to make people accountable for themselves, that's a personal initiative. That's a personal responsibility that, a person has to want to do themselves. But the point that I'm making is that the brothers, after all they did to Yusuf, they still found an opportunity to still lie on him, still talk about him, even after, and it affected Yusuf. Allah said, فَأَصَرَّهَا يُوسُف فِي نَفْسِهِ وَلَمْ يُبْدِهَا لَهُمْ. And Yusuf, he tucked it within himself. It affected him. But he kept it to himself and he didn't expose it to them. And then Yusuf said to himself, Antum sharrun makanan. You are the worst people. Even after all this time, you haven't seen your brother Yusuf in years. And even though you haven't seen him in years, you still never miss an opportunity to, to dog him out, to talk about him behind his back, to dishonor him. Even, don't you think that what you've done thus far has been dishonoring enough? And for some people, no. There is no limit to the pain that they will inflict on you. There is no limit. That's just who they are. So we are thinking that, time has passed. Maybe I can come back to this person and maybe they'll apologize and maybe they'll own their wrong and maybe they'll take ownership of what they did. And when you come back to that person, they still looking at you like, I didn't do anything wrong. Friendships that we've had with people and we kind of go our separate ways, because of things that took place in the relationship. And then, after some years, we figure, I grew up with this person, I'm friends with this person, I knew this person for a long time. And let me come back into this person's life to, to rekindle that relationship. But the number one thing that, can make that happen is that the person has to own their wrong. The person has to, own what they did. And then you come back to that person and they looking at you like, I never did anything wrong. That's just somehow some people are. Their pain knows no limit, and trauma breeds trauma. So therefore, their pain is transferable to anybody that comes into their space. As I said in my post yesterday on Instagram, sometimes you have to just leave people where they are. Sometimes you have to just leave people where they are. As I said in my lecture yesterday, sometimes we even pay to get people out of our lives. You loan a person $100, $200, right? And the person never pays you back. And of course, America is the only country where a person who they owe you money and they don't want to talk to you. It's like, how you boycotting me? How you got an issue with me? How you mad at me and you owe me money? You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it works. You know what I mean? Like, and if the person stops calling you, the person stops reaching out to you, the person stops talking to you because they owe you money, don't ask for your money back. Let them keep it and let them keep going, because the $200 that you loaned them, that they never paid you back, that they stopped calling you because of, you just gave them $200 to get the hell out of your life. And if that's all my relationship with you was worth, was $200, I don't need you in my life. Take that $200 and go live your best life. You know what I mean? Like, we have nothing else to talk about. As Khidr said to Musa, هَذَا فِرَاقُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. This is where we go our separate ways. This is where We go our separate ways. I gave you $200, you never paid me back. $250, you never paid me back. And you're not going to call me. You don't come around and see me anymore because you afraid that you owe me. Keep that and keep going. I just paid you $200 to get the hell out of my life. Because when you go back and you ask the person for the money back, you are asking them to, come back into your life. Because once they pay you, now they're back in your life again. Because they feel entitled. I gave you your money back, so now we cool again. No, we can never be cool. Take that and keep going. You have to leave people where they are. Relationships, bad, unhealthy relationships are like broken glass. Better to leave it on the ground broken as it is, rather than go back and pick it up and cut yourself in the process. We go back and we try to rekindle relationships with people and we end up hurting ourselves because we are in a different place and that person or those people have not changed. You are in a different place and the other person has not changed. You working on yourself, refinement, that process of refining yourself, and you're working on yourself, and you get to a point where you start to become happy and you're healthy, you're in a good place. And then you go back to, people who you used to be cool with, on a different level. And you try to rekindle a relationship with them and the relationship becomes very toxic because they haven't worked on themselves, but you have. So you're moving with a different energy. You're moving with a different energy that makes them uncomfortable. And as I said yesterday, rather than change themselves because of how you make them feel, they would rather change you because of how you make them feel. They would rather change you because of how you make them feel rather than change themselves because of how you make them feel. Because it's easier to change you. It's easier to criticize you, become overly critical of you when you come around. Oh, you're like this, or you think you brand new, or you're like this, or you're like that. It's easy to break a person down because it doesn't require anything from you other than being who you just genuinely are. It doesn't require you to be anything more than what you genuinely are. That's just who you are. Overly judgmental, critical, unnecessarily critical, miserable individual. That's just who you are. So when a person comes around that's working on themselves, we begin just tearing the person down because that's easy, because that's just who we are naturally. Rather than appreciate the work that the person is doing on themselves. Appreciate the refinement, appreciate the evolution, appreciate, the person, on their journey and admiring that and saying, wow, show me the blueprint, show me the starting point so I can get started on my journey. That takes a lot of energy. Number one, that takes you being honest with yourself and to realize that you are not perfect. Realize that you got some issues that you need to work out within yourself. That requires a lot, and some of us are not ready to do that. So rather than do that, when the person comes around that's already began their journey, we rather just tear you down. Sit from a place of privilege and criticize you and all of the things that you're doing, rather than, looking at you and admiring, your process and your journey and begin fixing ourselves. That's just who we are as individuals. So, I just wanted to kind of share that with you guys. But, look at the story of Yusuf. Man, jealousy and envy is dangerous because people who are tested with it, have no limits to the depths of their attempt to discredit everybody else that, the people that they are jealous and envious of. Even after all of these years passed, and Yusuf was an adult now, he's the king of Egypt, and they're still, never spare an opportunity to destroy his honor. Oh, if he stole, he had a brother that stole before him. And what they were referring to was, something that Yusuf did when he was a kid. One of his relatives used to worship an idol, so he stole the idol, right? He stole the idol so his uncle or, grandfather on his mom's side would stop worshiping the idol. It wasn't that he was a thief, but they were just using the opportunity. Anytime when a person is just miserable like that, they'll use any opportunity that they can to discredit you. As the saying goes, when a person is toxic, a toxic person, when they can't control you, they will control what other people think about you. That's a toxic person. When they can't control you, they try to control what other people think about you. And that's cold hard facts. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you guys, inshallah ta'ala. Just giving some Quranic reference. A lot of times I'm going through material, I'm giving a class, and I was actually covering this with my 4th grade. And obviously I couldn't go into the, details with them that I'm going through with you guys, because they just mentally, they're not on that level, and they haven't had any reference points where they can make the connection. So as we're going through it, the thought pops into my mind, and I jot it down. And I said, the moment I get an opportunity to sit down and talk about this, I'll bring it up in a discussion. So I'll close out the Periscope, inshallah. I'll open it back up for a couple of minutes for questions and answers. But I just want you guys to think about that, man. Like we're getting older. A lot of us have been around for a long time, and to remain the same, expecting that you're going to get a different result out of life is insanity. Albert Einstein said, to do the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, is insanity. It is insane to believe that you can remain the same and you're going to get a different result. You are the same person. Nothing about you has changed. So you're going to constantly get the same result over and over and over again until you start to make the corrections in your life that are necessary for you to get a different result. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.